In 1961, meteorologist Edward Lorenz made a simple rounding error in his weather prediction model using 0.506 instead of the full 0.506127. This tiny discrepancy led to completely different weather patterns in his simulation, revealing a profound truth. Minuscule changes can trigger vast, unpredictable consequences. Lorenz later asked, "Does the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil set off a tornado in Texas?" Giving birth to what we now call the butterfly effect. This concept, central to chaos theory, has proven remarkably applicable beyond meteorology, especially in understanding pivotal moments throughout human history. Chaos theory teaches us that within complex systems, initial conditions matter enormously, and prediction becomes increasingly difficult as time passes. Our world, with its interconnected economies, societies, and ecological systems, represents perhaps the most complex system imaginable. Consider June 28, 1914 in Sarajevo. The driver of Archduke Franz Ferdinand's car made a wrong turn, placing the royal directly in the path of Gavrilo Princip, a despondent assassin who had given up after a failed bombing attempt earlier that day. This chance encounter, the result of a simple navigational error, provided Princip the opportunity to fire the shots that killed the Archduke and his wife. Within weeks, this seemingly isolated incident cascaded into World War I, claiming 20 million lives and redrawing the global map. The butterfly's wings had flapped, and the world convulsed in response. What if the driver had followed the planned route? What if Princip had gone home rather than stopping for a sandwich at Schiller's Delicatessen? History might have unfolded entirely differently. The fragile Austro-Hungarian Empire might have persisted longer, potentially altering the conditions that later gave rise to fascism in World War II. Modern history abounds with similar examples. In December 2010, Mohamed Bouazizi, a Tunisian street vendor, set himself on fire after authorities confiscated his wares and publicly humiliated him. This desperate act of protest by a single individual ignited the Arab Spring, a series of uprisings across the Middle East and North Africa that toppled governments and reshaped regional politics. One man's personal tragedy became the catalyst for revolutionary movements affecting hundreds of millions. The butterfly effect explains why the Arab Spring spread as it did. Tunisia's successful revolution created an information cascade that emboldened citizens in Egypt, Libya, Yemen, and beyond. Social media accelerated these cascades, allowing individual stories and images to ripple across borders at unprecedented speed. What began as one man's desperate protest transformed into a regional phenomenon through countless individual decisions to join, share, and act. Technology amplifies these butterfly effects exponentially. In 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto published a 9-page white paper describing Bitcoin. This modest academic proposal has since spawned a trillion-dollar cryptocurrency industry, challenging fundamental assumptions about currency, banking, and governmental control of financial systems. The paper might easily have disappeared into obscurity, read by a handful of cryptography enthusiasts. Instead, it ignited a revolution that continues to reverberate through global finance. Environmental butterfly effects illustrate the concept with particular clarity. In 1859, Thomas Austin released 24 rabbits in Australia for hunting purposes. Without natural predators, these rabbits multiplied explosively, eventually numbering in the billions and causing ecological devastation across the continent. Austin's simple decision, releasing a few rabbits for sport, transformed Australia's landscape permanently and continues to cost the country approximately $200 million annually in agricultural losses and mitigation efforts. What chaos theory teaches us about these historical inflection points is profound, yet unsettling. Prediction is fundamentally limited. Complex systems like human societies contain too many variables, too many potential butterflies waiting to flap their wings. Each action, however small, enters an intricate web of cause and effect where outcomes become essentially impossible to forecast beyond short time frames. Yet some systems exhibit attractors, states toward which the system naturally gravitates. History suggests certain attractors in human affairs, the tendency toward increasing connectivity, for instance, or the cyclical nature of economic booms and busts. While we cannot predict specific events, understanding these larger patterns helps us recognize the types of butterflies most likely to trigger significant storms. This unpredictability cuts both ways. The same mechanism that makes societies vulnerable to catastrophic chain reactions also creates space for positive transformation. Rosa Parks's decision to remain seated on a Montgomery bus in 1955 seemed insignificant in isolation, but proved instrumental in accelerating the American civil rights movement. A single act of peaceful defiance altered the trajectory of a nation. Similarly, Stanislav Petrov's split-second decision not to report an apparent missile attack in 1983, correctly judging it to be a false alarm, likely prevented a nuclear exchange between the United States and Soviet Union. Perhaps most fascinatingly, the butterfly effect reveals that history isn't merely shaped by great individuals. The nameless driver who took a wrong turn in Sarajevo, the Tunisian officials who confiscated Bouazizi's cart, the programmers who first adopted Nakamoto's protocol, these ostensibly minor characters became unwitting architects of world-changing events. History emerges not just from the decisions of presidents and generals, but from the complex interplay of countless individual actions, most deemed insignificant at the time. Understanding history through the lens of chaos theory offers neither comfort nor clear direction. Instead, it provides something more valuable: humility. It reminds us that consequences cascade in ways we cannot fully anticipate, that complex systems resist our attempts at perfect control, and that each of our actions, however small, ripples outward in patterns we may never comprehend. For policymakers and citizens alike, this perspective suggests both caution and hope. Caution because our interventions in complex systems often yield unintended consequences. Hope because positive change need not always require massive resources or power. Sometimes a single butterfly, flapping at precisely the right moment, can indeed alter history's course. The butterfly effect doesn't absolve us of responsibility, rather it heightens it. In a connected world where small causes yield unpredictable but potentially massive effects, mindfulness about our actions becomes not just virtuous but necessary. We may not be able to predict exactly how our wings will affect distant storms, but we can choose, with care and intention, when and how to flap them.